I recently finished The Will of the Many by James Islington. Might actually be Islington. I'm not 100% sure how to pronounce it. Doesn't matter. Still very much enjoyed this offering from this author. Today, I want to review it. I'm going to try to avoid spoilers here at the top, but to really review this book, I feel like I have to get into some spoilers as we get on. So I would say, if you are looking for a review that's not going to spoil it, just go read the book. I think the book is quality enough. It is a hard recommendation from me, so instead of watching a review, trust my review and the number of other reviews out there. This is a good book if you enjoy fantasy, if you enjoy dark academia, if you enjoy Roman history, this is a book for you. So just go watch it. We're going to get into some spoilers here, so this is your warning. Quick overview of the plot, and then we'll start to get into some of the nitty gritty. This story is about an orphan who has been orphaned by a war, who has been orphaned by a takeover of their home territory, and is trying to make their way in the new world without succumbing to the new hierarchy, which is the new ruling class of the world in which they live. It's a very compelling tale. It's one that we've heard before, but it's told in a way that is a bit different. There's a bit of nuance. There's a bit of the author's perspective that I think keeps it fresh. Our protagonist, Vis, is that orphan, and through circumstance, he comes in contact with a very powerful person in the new hierarchy who ends up adopting them because they want an heir. They want someone to go through the academy, to go through the training so that they can have somebody on the inside that can kind of search through a mystery that they're dealing with, but also that can bring their name up a little bit by doing very well in the academy. Your basic orphan gets plucked into a situation where they then have to compete against the hierarchy through competing against the children of the people who hold up this new society. Very Hunger Games-ish, very much Red Rising light. It has those same types of elements, but there are moments that are definitely unique and definitely fresh. Although there is that framework, it is not a carbon copy of those pieces of media. I want to talk a little bit about the pace because I felt that that was a strong point and something that I was a little bit worried about going into this book because I have read the Licanius trilogy, which is James Islington's first 3 books. And while I did like them, I definitely didn't like them even close to as much as I liked The Will of the Many. And I think the pace really had something to do with that. In Licanius, things seemed to drag a little bit more. There was more superfluous detail. There was more emphasis on the world building that felt a little bit just heavy-handed. There was more emphasis on the magic system. It just didn't flow as well as The Will of the Many did. So I went into The Will of the Many thinking, okay, I know that this author is going to take us on a journey, but it's going to take us a long time to get there. I could not have been more wrong. This maybe is growth from the author, but the book moves at a much better pace. Not to say that it's rushed. There are definitely moments of slowness. There are definitely moments of solitude with our main character. There's moments where there's not a lot of action happening, but even in those moments, I felt that it was written in such a way that I was never bored. When I talk about pace, I don't mean that it's always rushed and there's always action. In this book, like I said, there's moments of slowness, but slowness in itself is not a problem if it is still paced well within the narrative. And I think The Will of the Many really hits the nail on the head. When there were times in the book where we're ebbing into a slower moment, and I'm just starting to think, okay, we need something to push us forward, bang, there it was. And there was a moment of high tension, or there was a moment of action that then ramped us back up. The book just flows so well. In the realm of characters, I think that this is a really good one. See, this is first-person perspective. We are with one character the whole time, which I think is refreshing. I've read a lot of fantasy novels recently that are, multi-perspective, and that change in perspective can kind of get confusing. With this, it felt like being at home, kind of just staying with one person, being able to take in the action around one single person and one single perspective. It was a breath of fresh air for me. I couldn't say that phrase. If you saw the edit there, I said it like 12 times. A breath of fresh air for me personally. I enjoyed that a lot. And I enjoyed being with Vis. I've seen some talk online that Vis was a Gary Stu or a Mary Sue, meaning that he was just the best at everything without really having to try, especially when you get into the academic setting. And I think a lot of people are missing the fact that this is kind of a takedown of Nepo babies. There is clear indication, there's clear discussion throughout this book that the hierarchy, the system that has taken over this world, does not accurately represent merit. It is instead, how can you get ahead? It mirrors a lot of the systems and jobs in our world. It mirrors the fact that if you have a little bit of in with some of the people in power, you will have an easier time getting to where you want to be. So these discussions about how it's kind of cheap that Vis is able to do all of these things and to make his way through the academy and to get to the top of the academy so easily are missing the fact that these students that are in the academy are propped up as being the best of the best, when in actuality, they are there because of their family's power. They are there because they know people, as opposed to being the most talented or the most worthy or having merit in a specific area, which I thought actually worked really well as we see Vis pretty easily maneuver his way through the hierarchy system in the school. I think that that is just a great takedown of the overall system that is being put in place. Because I had seen some discussion about Vis not being very compelling, I think that that perspective really changes the way that you look at Vis and the way that you look at the system in general. Other things that I enjoyed that don't really fit into the neat categories that I use when I'm reviewing a book. I really like that James Islington is the Christopher Nolan of books. The man loves time. The man loves different dimensions. That played a huge role in the Licanius trilogy, and it seems to be playing a huge role in this text and probably in this trilogy. I really enjoyed the magic system, even though it wasn't fully fleshed out, knowing that in the Licanius trilogy, it took us a long time to kind of get where we were going with the magic system. I went in understanding that we weren't going to get a lot of answers about how the magic system works. So I think that helped me kind of frame the way that I looked at the magic. It's interesting. It's not very well explained at all, and it probably will not be well explained until we get to the end of the trilogy. And even then, you will probably have some questions if this follows the same track as the Licanius trilogy. I think that it's interesting enough that you want to know more, and that is what keeps you reading. I liked the allusion to ancient Rome. I liked the fact that that allowed you to kind of get oriented in the space. I think a huge problem that a lot of fantasy, especially modern fantasy, has is the first 5 chapters, you as the reader are just trying to get your head above water with the magic system, with the world, with the character names. But because this has so many allusions to ancient Rome, you're able to orient yourself around the hierarchy system. You're able to orient yourself around like how the society is playing, how the society actually interacts with the people that live within the society. There was always that touchstone of ancient Rome that you could kind of look to. There's moments where you're like, I don't really understand this. And then you say, oh, allusions to the Colosseum. I know about that. So you can really get yourself on track with where the plot is going without having the characters explain it to you, if you have even the basic fundamental knowledge of ancient Rome. So I thought that that was a really good narrative concession that allowed the reader to always keep track without having these huge info dumps. So I really appreciated that. There wasn't really much that I disliked in this book. I'm racking my brain trying to think. I think anything that I would dislike would be so minor and so superfluous that, you know, it's probably not really worth mentioning. I gave the book a 4 out of 5. That may creep up as the trilogy continues because, like I said, sometimes you have to judge the book in a saga or in a series based on its own merits, but also based on the entire trilogy as a whole. So I don't think we can fully judge this book completely until the trilogy is finished up. But as a book on its own, I think it's a really, really solid, 4.5 out of 5 for me. And it will probably be a 5 out of 5 for a lot of people. I am very stingy with my 5 out of 5 ratings. It has to pretty much be a life-changing book for me to give it a 5. But that may change as the trilogy goes on. So those are my thoughts on The Will of the Many. I thought it was an incredible entry into the modern fantasy landscape in which we're living. I think it came out in 2023. Still feels incredibly fresh. I'm excited for the second book. Let me know what you thought if you've read this book, if you want to read this book. If your opinions differ from mine, I would love to read them, try and get different perspectives. That's what this channel is all about. Thank you so much for watching. Go read this book. I hope you enjoy it. I will see you next time.